Good morning, everyone. So this video, it's been quite delayed, which I apologize for that. But I did want to make a response to a comment that was made where one of the comment, I forgot her name. I'm so sorry to the person who, if this is your comment, so you would know. But you said, you commented on one of my videos and saying that what makes an ENFP like so good? You know, what's the point of, I guess, our existence? Which was interesting because you were saying how it was because you had a conversation with your ESFP friend, and you know that kind of topic came up, which I thought was really interesting to kind of discuss today. And what's even more hilarious is that it actually took me a lot longer than I expected, like pondering that topic, what makes us so good, because a lot of the videos, at least the ones I've been trying to create, have been more to give us a more realistic perspective, to portray ENFPs in a way that's more not so much palatable, but to the point where we're so much more like understood. Because I disagree with the whole like, oh, we're just misunderstood. Like, I don't agree with that. Like, I think you can definitely understand an ENFP for what they are and what they do, and that's why it kind of took me a little moment to think about it, because I'm like, oh, like in my pursuit of like ENFPs being realistic, I completely forgot, you know, what about us is so great? You know, what about us that makes people want us around or push people away or any of those, you know, little concepts or little things. So I wanted to, you know, go off at that for a bit, because it's not necessarily something that even I myself was open to until, you know, I guess today. And I've been trying to crowdsource it a lot with a lot of my a lot of the friends, like on Twitter and, you know, in Discord, to try to figure out like what about ENFPs that's, you know, that's so great. Because I like to look at my own type and I'd be like, this is, you know, this is just hilarious. But anyways, I do compiled a list. Unfortunately, the list is in my brain. So for everybody here, wasting your time with me. I'm amazed sometimes at how the people have the patience to listen to me monologue. It's hilarious. But to get to my point, so I do have a list of things which I will somehow subtly recall as I'm talking. Thank goodness I'm driving, because then there's something that's going on. That's to keep my mind focused. But anyways, I do want to, part of this video, first of all, I want to make a shout out to, I believe her name is Michelle, HM Wilson, Author Wilson or whatever on Twitter. Gosh, the thing is that I don't have like anything, because I can't hold anything except the wheels of my car. So you know who you are. When you mentioned that ENFPs can also be devil's advocate, that really struck a chord in a good way to me, and it was very amazing to come across that concept, because I never really did think of myself as that kind of person, as a devil's advocate. Like, I mean, to be fair, I've been doing that most of my life, but I just never really took it into heart, because I always, you know, just left it for the ENTPs. You know, like, ENTPs are always called that, therefore let them have it. You know, TI arguing with the person, making them their collateral, like it works, and I've never really understood that FI could be used in a similar fashion until she kind of worded it out for me, and I'm going, wait a minute, that's correct, I do. So what makes ENFP so awesome? Well, for one thing, any FI, we will give you an alternative always. And in the case of devil's advocate, we will challenge your morals with alternatives all the time. And at least with me, I tend to challenge your viewpoint with another viewpoint, or with another perspective, another worldview that I don't necessarily adhere to, because I don't, like, it doesn't really bother me per se, but I will use that viewpoint and argue that viewpoint if it means like matching up to yours in a way that I know you could be able to refine yours better. Because like, we're the type of people that, like, if you ask us a question like, is this good enough, then we'll throw you like all these potential possibilities of why these things could happen, or what could happen, what if, and if you could shut them each down, then kudos to you, you know, then that's a good thing. It's really interesting to like watch that happen, like to see that happen in other ENFPs. I'm actually really excited when I see other ENFPs do this, when they really do bring up something, obviously within means. Like I know some folks find it annoying, but within means it's definitely a way to snap a person's, maybe their conscience, maybe their doubts into play. At least with me, it's like I have a million ways to think of. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but I have a million ways for positive and a million ways for negative. And I believe another ENFP, Crystal, and a shout out to you, Crystal, has mentioned this in a video of hers, where we can really shift our perception if we choose to, because of how we are. And I like to say that my NE has infinite bullets, and I never expect to be correct. But obviously, if you're shooting blindly with infinite bullets, you will eventually land on one. And it's one way to look at NE. And another way to look at it, at least with how I ended up coping with this kind of mentality, was that I tend to fill in gaps with NE a lot. NE tends to suddenly become this desire to, oh wow, I'm getting all deep because I'm losing my thought. I'm gonna mean as I'm using deeper words because I'm trying to like elongate, be more eloquent when it's not really anything. No. The point I wanted to make was with ENFPs, and that when I say fill in the gaps, because let's say you have two containers, and you just so happen to have an infinite amount of water to fill those containers up. It's very easy for me to now judge based on the measurements of said containers when you just fill it in with your NE. So in situations, I tend to fill in my NE to things, and if I start to realize, like, wait a minute, I'm overworking one aspect, like I'm putting a lot of water in one container. Why is that? How big is this container? What am I missing? What if there's something else going on behind the curtain? And apply this metaphor as an extension, and I hope you guys are still bearing with me on this. Apply it towards, let's say when you're entering a conversation and you don't have context, and let's say you entered the conversation for the first time, and you're with your friends, but they're talking about something and you don't know what they're talking about. Your NE is going to start filling in the gaps right away. So you're going to start thinking, oh, okay, so what are they talking about? They could say something like, oh, peanut butter. And you think for a second, peanut butter. And for a second there, you don't just sit there with the word peanut butter. And the thing is I'll ask, but as I'm asking, I'm also thinking, as I ask, what about the peanut butter? In my mind, I'm already making all those connections. So I'm already thinking like peanut butter. So like spreading, like bread. Are we talking about yeast? Are we talking about bread? Are we talking about baking? Are we talking about just the peanut, like the kind of peanut butter? The brands. Are we talking about the brand in terms of profits, sales? Are we talking about like, did you find a coupon at a supermarket that's really cheap and you wanted to do that? So I've already considered like 10 or maybe even more scenarios as to what this conversation is going to become until the person finally tells me. And I don't feel bad if I'm wrong, because to me the generating of 10 wasn't hard. That didn't take me like a minute. That didn't take me like a while to think about. I would sit there and I would already have scenarios done and I'd be fine. Like, to be fair, that actually gave me more energy than it did lose energy. I would say I would lose energy if they concluded it right away, because I'm like, oh no, like it got cut. But and I think that's what I mean by filling it in with the gaps. Like, it's not that hard. So when you have an ENFP around, I would say that you wouldn't have to worry about us not being readily accepting whatever it is that you're presenting to us, because we will readily accept it. It's not hard for us to consume information right away. It's what makes us so good and allows us to fake our way through. I would say fake. Maybe I'm going to stand by that word. We'll fake our way through a lot of things in life because we have a tendency to grasp concepts and kind of mess around with the context a little because of our NE. Like, we may not be 100% accurate, nor do we try to be 100% accurate. I mean, granted, we're not ENTPs, so there's no accuracy being, found here. But what we do have is TE, which is what we're using to be able to utilize information the best way we can. So, like for example, like when I was working as a technician, like this was such a very TI heavy job where you're required to understand everything about it, and very SE, because like you had to be able to deal with the constant changing of or if not enacting a change on the environment in order to make it bend to your will in that sense, to always succeed. So things that I'm not particularly good at, because I'm more of the lay back, observe and think of scenario type of guy. But weaponize that NE for a second and look at that same concept, and suddenly you're like, wait a minute, what if I do this, what if I do that, and what if I become this kind of person too? What if I also do this too and apply this and see what happens? Take in the information, because we consume information really, really quickly. So like, okay, so electricity theory, okay, so let's apply that. Basics, foundations, okay, done. We just need a screwdriver. Okay, look at all the screwdrivers. Which one? Bam, 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 bam. Okay, which one's the wrench? Okay, bam, bam, bam. Like, it's just very... And the next thing you know, you're going, Next thing you know, you're just like speeding right through work and just getting things done. And on top of that, you have customer service powers. So you're like, yay, hey, how are you? What's up? And then as you're doing that, because you're not focusing so hard on maintaining the accuracy on something, you can move your mind and multitask on something else, which I think can be a double-edged sword, definitely. Like I personally, I don't know if other ENFPs can relate to this, but I personally think that it's kind of hilarious to watch people talk about like, oh, other people are better at multitasking, and I'm going, but I'm actually pretty good at multitasking too. I just don't like to claim it as my forte, so what if I can juggle like 20 things at once? That doesn't mean anything to me. I just thought that's a natural thing that I do, so I never really put of it as a strength for anything, but apparently it is. But it has to be, I would say, it still has to have some level of control, because like multitasking has its prices as well. If you try to do it, then there's also that kind of concept where you never settle on anything and you only give 20% between 5 things, and it doesn't really compute to 100, because you're not giving 100 to every single thing, which is also a problem on its own. But it's still relatively cool and really fun to really like look at any this way. Like another good thing I would say that's really cool about what's so good about being an ENFP, I personally, and this is why it's part of this is hilarious, because it's so hard for me to explain something unless it's like confirmed by others. It's really difficult for me to take it. Or to express it that way. But anyways, I personally like to view things by competency a lot. Like, it's not hard for me to walk into a room and know exactly what resource I need to pull from the room. It's really easy. I may not always get it right, but I'm not looking to be right. I'm looking to be efficient. I'm looking to be what is the most correct in that moment. And I will adapt and shift accordingly if another one presents its case. So in a room, let's say I walk into a room and it's like about 20 people, I'd start picking up cues that these people are, one's a doctor, or one's really good at pouring coffee, one's like really interesting at, like one's really into gossiping. Like every little potential resource that they have, I'm already accumulating it in my mind. And as I interact with them, again, more is accumulated as well. And it just keeps going on and on and on and on. Because I guess my SI is so minimal, like it's so inferior that it's really, I would like to compare it as like the little child with a pad and pen, just like writing down little notes, but not really making itself known for anything. It's just letting itself, because it can't really be sure, if it took the reins it'd be overwhelmed, but because it's not taking in control of the wheel, so it's not gonna be, it's not its problem. So like with me, it's just gonna have to be like that, and it gets really, really fun, I would say, watching that go down, because it's like when I walk into a room and I see that, I have acquired like these potential resources. And to people out there who, I don't know if you guys, if other ENFPs get this a lot, but it really is not hard, for me at least, to know who's competent and who's not. It's not hard for me to know who is better suited for a job, because I've already accumulated and filled it in with my NE to the point where it's probably overflowed the container. The container being that person's competency level in my mind. So I have gotten it wrong. I remember, like, this guy, I know, like, I didn't realize he was a genius, but he is, and here we are. But now that I know, it's like I'm keeping that in mind. You're in my pocket now, because I am definitely not letting that go. But it's it comes in handy in situations where people have a lack of idea, is when I fill it in. To me, open space, if there's a term for a loving open spaces, let's say agoraphile, maybe that's the space I wanted to say. As an agoraphile, like, I love open spaces, because my reasoning is open spaces allows me to fill it in with ideas. Open spaces allows me to maintain a level of not consistency. It maintains a level of freedom, autonomy, but also free flow of ideas that is more or less what I've been, hunting for, all my life. Like, this is something that I'm, like, really, really interested in. And now, what else is having an ENFP? It's like, part of this, I think it's getting really funny for me, because part of it is like an advertisement for myself as well, which is really awkward. For lack of a better word, guys, it's very, like, what is it, my Enneagram 9, which is, like, blend into the background. Like, I don't want to be known. No, it's weird. But at the same time, it's like, no, that's not really the point. Like, what else are we good at? I have to say, too, that I want to tackle, like, the compassionate, empathetic nature of ENFPs. What's so great about, I mean, here's the thing, that we probably share this with ESFPs as well, but we do, like, because of our FI and our TEs are so close together, at least with I don't necessarily see my morality as so absolute, especially because it's so personal. Like, I have a lot of things that my values that are considered very personal, and I'm using MBTI terms in this. I mean, I could shift over to socionics and start, describing it differently a little bit more, but there is a thing where, and I think this is, like, what makes this, because FI is, I would say, the engine, the fuel behind a lot of our actions. It's really good to have an ENFP when they're defending you, and I think I think that's the point I wanted to make with ENFPs. It's like, when you have them around, you have an actual really good support system. Unlike SPs, we have SI, and unlike, I guess, NI users, we have NE. So what ends up happening is, like, we will become the mode that we need to maintain and ensure that we have it in the bag. Let's say, like, for example, I'm drawn to leaders. Like, I'm drawn to people who have strong personalities. I'm drawn to people who, or, like, attracted to people who kind of, like, know their own thing, and they're very tough as nails. They stick to their guns, not because I myself am not one, or not because I myself, like, consider myself, like, a follower of some kind, but it's like, I've noticed that whenever I'm around leaders, when they fall, when they aren't themselves, or when they drop their guard, or when they're not being their optimal self, is when I become, like, the most important resource in their life. And I think that's a thing that with ENFPs, that I don't know if other ones realize this, but we are really there for people when things go down, because the ability to look, or not the ability, but the preference to look at alternatives allows us to give somebody who's closing down or who's feeling down options. And that's not something that they are privy to. I don't think a lot of them have, they're not used to having that kind of thing. Or, like, when you go down, when you feel down, or when you're not feeling good, you tend to close up, and you tend to only look at one thing, like you tunnel vision basically. And I mean this in like when you're going to the negative state. Obviously, I know there's like NI users there who like normally tunnel vision and they use it in like wonderfully. That's not the point I was trying to make. I'm just saying that with us, with ENFPs, and how we see potential, we can look at a person and suddenly draw like a million things out of you and tell you that this is what makes you you. And again, present you with moral dilemmas again to challenge your own moral code to see if there's anything else that needs to be fixed, and to just move on with that and just keep going and going and going. I mean, granted, I'm also a 7, so like an Enneagram 7, so like it's really hard for people to be down when they're around me because that's not my cup of tea. If I see you being down, I'll be like, yo, like hand you a bottle, like, you know, a glass of beer, like let's make it happen. But yeah, like I just wanted to bring that up because it's kind of fun to I'm gonna take this moment this morning to just kind of enjoy what's so great about being one, because like I personally am pretty glad that I am one. You know, like as much as I like to say things like, oh, it's a curse to live with any, and oh no, what it's like to have inferior SI, and like, oh dear, it's not at all that bad. Maybe I'm exaggerating it, maybe, but I realize I'm using a lot of hyperboles just to like make a point, but to really, I guess, put the nail on this metaphorical coffin, or to beat this dead horse all the way, what makes us so good, we are the people that can really notice when things need to change. We may not enact the change, that's for sure. I know you have the FJs out there who know what to do. We may not know though, but we definitely know what. Or we don't know, like the feeling is there. So what are we supposed to do when you have an ENFP around you is, I have to say first though, before I continue on, is gotta gauge the strength of their TE first. Gotta gauge the strength of their SI first. An ENFP, of course, can't suddenly can't make their lower functions like so good, because I can never compare it to like a TE DOM or to an SI DOM. Like it just doesn't work like that. But we can develop it enough to compensate, because any is such a very powerful function. And I know, like from what we discussed, or what I was discussing like earlier, with the whole filling gaps thing, like you don't have to ever worry with us that we'll never miss. I would say, like, you don't have to always give us all the information, because we will do that work for you. But at the same time, we as ENFP should be feeling more responsible to at least ask more questions to get a clearer understanding of something. I think underneath all of out of the type of the ENFP, underneath it all, we do want to be able to use information properly. And if we don't know everything, and we're just going by assumptions, we won't know. Like, we won't be able to be as efficient as we want to be. And that's definitely something that we really need to take in. And once an ENFP is incredibly efficient like that, like, it's really hard for us to, it's hard to, like, top that, to be honest. Like, it's, like, I know, for me at least, it's like I've shocked SE users when they come into a room, and yeah, they can do everything and they make it happen, but I'm there constantly plotting, scheming, as well as doing, because like I've accumulated and explored so much already with any, and I've taken so many notes with my SI, and I'm already creating like all these like kind of speed little mental notes in my brain, what needs to be skipped. And because I don't need that information, I've already absorbed that information, so we're just going to continue on and on and on and on. Like, for example, with accumulation of skills, like I may not be the person in the room that knows all the tools in the shed, but give me a week in that same room every day, and I can get you I would probably be as quick as well by after that week, which requires, like, to me, it's like requires time a lot. And I think with an ENFP, we need that specific time to develop ourselves enough. You can't lock us down, because we need to explore, to learn, to absorb, and to apply. Because at the end of the day, we're looking to apply a lot of our information. We don't just keep it inside. Because I personally don't want to be stuck inside myself. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's that sounds like a very terrible way to look at the world. Like, I don't want to be forever stuck in my world, because it's, especially when there's other worlds out there. Like, I'm just too super fascinated by that, and I can't stand like not being a part of that in some sense. So it's very fun. I'm gonna keep gushing about it a little bit. Like, y'all are gonna be enjoying this little take I'm taking with myself. It's like, oh wow, what's so good about us? Another thing just to add as well. See, again, I keep adding. That's another thing though. If you want to waste time with us, like, this is the person you want to look for. We will waste time, no problem. We will always like think of something to do. I know I was talking to an ESFP before, and her concern was not having enough to say, like to run out of things to say. And then for me, it's to always be talking and the other person can't say anything. That's my concern. So it's always like a matter of, I have to check in with you if you want to say something. Because if you don't say anything, you don't give me the cue, and if I wasn't conscious, like, you know, I'm going to be monologuing all day, you know, all day, day. And because like, again, like, let's, for lack of a better term, if you are the human in front of me, you are essentially an empty container that I'm going to fill in with ideas. Basically, that's what's gonna happen. So unless that, you know, that container fights back, which is another reason why I appreciate SE users, because they and FUs, like, all the extroverted other ones are gonna like put up a wall, be like, hey, my turn to talk, and I'll be like, oh, thank you, you know. Yay. Because like, this constantly doing this is fun for me, but I don't know how it is for you. So last thing, we will always consider you. Perspective. I don't know about the other ENFPs out there who are so, like, I guess, so involved with their personal take on things. I just say that that's kind of dangerous. Yes, I know we have to settle down with our, you know, and make a stand every now and then, but I do want to say that our being open-minded, not always, maybe that can be misconstrued, our being open to new perspectives, normally, like instinctually, like as a reaction thing, is so very important to us as a, I guess, as a type and as a dominant function, that utilizing that all the time should be fantastic. Like, that should be fine. Like, I know we may have belief systems that we're really, like, we hold down to the very bottom for, but we also do not have a problem taking in other people's perspectives, because taking that in only brings us closer to the truth. And comparing that with a different element for, like, there's no such thing as bad publicity kind of concept, where there's no such thing as, like, the wrong information, and that's very polar TI of me to say, and I can elaborate on that. It's because if it is wrong information that I'm taking, then I can take that out and then take in a new one, because I can't sit here and take in my own information because I could be biased. So I'm going to take in as much as I can and sift through all of them to see which works. Unfortunately, I guess due to the lack of introverted thinking and, you know, that aspect of critical thinking, it's not easy for me to do so, but I go by what's usable, you know, what's efficient. And so, like, what works. So that's going to have to be what it takes. So I do want to add that little bit, because having what makes us so great is also what makes us so annoying. I'm just glad. I feel like with other people, it's like, I'm glad you guys can have us, but I'm also thinking, like, it must be so great to have us by doses. And the thing is, it's also good that ENFPs have FI, because we also have our own thing where we also have to take time for ourselves. So it's a give and take regardless. So it still ends up working. So that should be fine, for lack of a better term. But that's how I kind of want to go with this. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. You know, see how this goes. I hope that answers your question. Let's see if there's a part 2. Why not? Let's make it happen. I'll go back to my YNV series as well, because I also have a few other types I want to get into. So that's going to happen. But anyways, you guys have a good morning, and until next time. Bye.